This is a 2019 Gibson Les Paul Special with the P90 pickups in the center of the body. And the reason why I wanted to review this particular guitar, I personally am a very big fan of P90 pickups. I think the P90s have a very distinct and unique tone that can't be really replicated properly with other types of pickups. In my opinion, the Gibson Les Paul Jr. with the single P90s is probably one of those types of guitars which has such a unique sound, such a unique tone, and it just looks cool, you know? So this is a relatively new Gibson Les Paul from the Gibson factory. I mentioned this in some of my other Gibson reviews. For me personally, a Gibson guitar from the 90s has been pound for pound the best Gibsons that I've ever played. When it comes to the newer Gibsons, I'd say post 2015, I've personally experienced some subpar quality control issues when it comes to Gibson guitars. So for example, I played a 2018 Gibson ES335 at Guitar Center. Classic guitar. I think the price point was about 3.5 grand, which is a lot of money. For that amount of money, I felt like the quality control was kind of lacking in terms of how the guitar was built. Even though this is a 2019 release Gibson, I'd say that this build quality is actually very good. So that's always been a question for me. I was always wondering why there is the inconsistency of quality control when it comes to the newer Gibson guitars. But like I said, for this particular guitar right here that I'm holding, the build construction is very good. This is a solid mahogany body. You can clearly tell by just the color and how the wood grains look. But surprisingly, for a mahogany guitar, this is actually on the somewhat lighter side, I'd say. This guitar by itself is not a light guitar, but the mahogany body guitars that I've held and that I've owned had always some type of good weight to it. But for this particular guitar, I'd say that this is maybe 7.5 pounds, which is pretty light for a Les Paul in my opinion. This Les Paul Custom right here is an easy 10 pounds, no problem. And this is the type of weight that I prefer actually. But this, even though the body design is still the same, minus the pickups, this is a reasonably much lighter guitar. So the reason why I brought this guitar out is because I just wanted to show you some of the differences between a special and a quote-unquote standard, you know, Les Paul. Obviously, the biggest difference is the pickups. These are just standard Gibson humbucking pickups. These are Gibson P90 pickups. But other than the pickups themselves, I'd say that the biggest difference between these two is how the pick guard looks. This pick guard, classic Gibson style pick guard, the half triangle. But for the specials, Gibson made a different looking pick guard design. Personally, I prefer this style pick guard just by the design, but in terms of the pick guard quality and how a pick guard should function, I'd say the special is a much better pick guard. And the reason why I'm saying this is because they made this pick guard just like a Fender would, you know, a Strat pick guard or a Tele pick guard, as in the pick guard is bolted flat onto the body. There's no way for me to pry this open unless, you know, I use a lot of force and maybe some type of tool. But for the Les Pauls, I always thought that the biggest design flaw was just this pick guard design. Right here, there's a space. There's a little gap, if you can see. And because of this gap, even though the design itself looks good, if I went like that, I could easily break this off, no problem. I could actually probably break it off with a pinky as well. But purely from a, you know, build quality perspective, I prefer this type of pickguard design by far. So other than, you know, the pickguard design, which looks a little different, and the P90s, I'd say that this is just a standard Gibson Les Paul style guitar. You know, the neck profile, they went with a more 50s style neck profile, as in a little bit bigger, a little bit chunkier. If I compare the necks of these two guitars, I'd say that it's pretty much the same. The thickness, the girth of the neck is pretty identical of these two guitars. But the thing I like about this guitar is just the lacquer that they put over the neck and also behind the body. This lacquer feeling is consistent throughout the entire guitar, and it gives it a very sleek feel, a very comfortable feel when you're playing. And I feel like this is the type of finish where when the guitar gets naturally relicked and worn, it will leave a very cool type of vintage look to the guitar. Classic 4 knobs for the Gibson. Standard 4 knobs, 2 tones, 2 volume, 2 pneumatic bridge and saddle design. Classic 3-way poker chip, rhythm, middle, and treble design. Standard Gibson Deluxe tuners, very high quality, and also a Les Paul logo right on the center of the headstock. Just a very traditional, very simple, classic guitar design by Gibson. So let's see how this guitar sounds, because P90s, like I say, has a very distinct tone to the guitar. So overall, I'd say this is a excellent sounding Gibson, despite it being a newer release where I say the quality control has been questionable. Like I said, for this particular Gibson that I'm holding, the quality control is perfectly fine. In fact, the quality is pretty good, I'd say. I'd recommend this particular Les Paul for someone who is interested in getting into a Gibson, but they don't want to shell out the big bucks for like a standard or a custom. You know, someone who's looking at a Gibson guitar under the price point of $1,500. I'd say that this is an excellent guitar to check out because it's basically a standard Les Paul, except the pickguard design, as well as these 2 P90 pickups. Build quality, this is an 8 out of 10. Tone quality, this is an 8 out of 10. Overall, it's just a very solid guitar. It's just a standard Gibson USA made guitar. And like I've mentioned several times in this video, I don't know why there is so much inconsistencies with Gibson. How can I play a $3,500 Gibson where the quality control is shady, whereas this, you know, $1,300 Gibson, the quality control is good? So that's probably my biggest gripe is, dude, Gibson, what are you doing, man? Get your quality control in check. Because if you're paying over $1,000 for a guitar, hey man, that guitar better be pretty damn good. But for this guitar, that is the case. Pretty nice.